Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Bringing America Greatness, Speaking Virtue to Leadership, a conversation with a good colleague of mine, Dr. Anthony Mitchell, and we hope to give you an idea of the upcoming book with that same title for the 250th anniversary of America, especially written so that folks will get an idea of why Bringing America Greatness requires a learning strategy for all leaders. So, Dr. Mitchell, it's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Let's share with America what we know about this topic of bringing America greatness.
Glad to be here. And first, I want to say, Dr. Sheffield, you have an amazing legacy as an educational leader,
Thank you.
as someone that's been very active with schools throughout the United States. So it's an honor for me to be here today with you to have this conversation on your new book. And I'm very excited about this book because I know that it's going to be a book that is going to change the landscape for those who truly want to understand what greatness is. And so I'm happy to be here. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and so we can get started.
Well, thank you for those kind words. I do appreciate it.
Oh, you're most welcome. Could you talk about your evolution from your first book, Practice Makes Perfect Not, Excellence is a Habit, and the latest book, Bringing America Greatness?
You know, I don't think I could have written this current book, Bringing America Greatness, without a real understanding of what the message of the first book was. What people do over and over and over again, that practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, as you know. What doing things over and over again truly do is make permanent. And that culture that surrounds that practice is what affects all of us.
That's right.
And as we look at America, especially America at this point in time, talking about, this notion of greatness, my sociology background says to me, what's the skill set? What's the practice for greatness? Because like excellence in the first book, there's a practice to it. And I learned growing up in my own family from my siblings, 20 of them, I learned that there is a culture to growing up Sheffield.
Right.
There's a practice you engage in when your family teaches you what the expectations are and how you are to act. And like that culture, excellence, greatness has a practice.
That's right.
So the first thing we have to understand about bringing America greatness is what's the practice. Right. I happen to know that excellence and greatness grow in the same garden.
That's right.
And so a lot of times we think of excellence as the end game. But at the end of the day, it's about greatness being the end game. And so one of my inspirations for this book was the synergy between the Declaration of Independence,
Right.
And what the Creator, in the minds of our founding fathers,
Right.
endowed for America in terms of those unalienable rights. And so one of the things that I have learned is that if we're going to develop as a country, we need to know the practice.
That's right.
And not claim greatness without knowing that greatness has expectations and practices that one should adhere to, including
That's right.
including how we live, work, play, and learn together.
That's right.
So it's been fun to write, but at the same time, what I learned from Practice Makes Perfect Not is that even though we like to think, and my athletic self will come out in this, as you
Right.
know, we've had some background in that.
Yes, we do.
my athletic self will come out. What I've learned being an athlete is that to be good at the sport, you got to practice.
Right.
And you got to know what those fundamentals are in order to practice the right things.
That's right.
Well, and that practice of commission, things you have to do to get good at it, is important.
Right.
So you got to know those things. What I've learned about this book on bringing America greatness is that one of the most dangerous parts of practice is what you omit
Right.
that often impedes one's development. And so if you're trying to teach somebody to play ball, you teach somebody how to pass and how to shoot, how to play defense.
Right.
And that may get you through many games. However, if you don't teach folks how to dribble and pass,
The fundamentals.
the fundamentals of the game, it's going to limit your greatness, your excellence. It's going to limit it.
That's right.
My folks got to know how to dribble.
Right.
Well, I've learned that greatness requires a fundamental skill called cultural competency. That is, if we want to live, work, play, and learn together, we got to practice the skill set to do that. And the problem with America is don't know how to dribble. We've learned some things,
Right.
but the basics of treating people in an honorable way, we don't know.
That's right. And I think that's a fundamental concept as you talk about greatness in this book. And in looking at Practice Makes Perfect Not, I can bear witness to the thousands of parents, teachers, curriculum directors, and civic leaders who learned a lot about what they were doing wrong in their understanding of the differences between practice, excellence, and developing the right habits. So could we talk a little bit about cultural competency as you have evolved it through the Equity Trilogy?
Yes, what I have learned in my experience in focusing on what are the things that become barriers for folks in just engaging our diversity. When the Creator made this world, and being a person, son of a preacher, I understand this spiritual, faith-based environment that we live in. And of course, 250 years ago, it was embedded into the foundation of America. The Pilgrims had an impact on how this government evolved. And they invoked the Creator when they were declaring their independence. From England. And so the challenge it was, how do you begin to help folks understand that and those inalienable rights have evolved in America into treating people honorably. That everybody was entitled to that opportunity to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So in my view, this notion of equity is embedded into who we are as a people. Everybody deserves it.
That's right.
And so we have opportunities for folks who have circumstances that inhibit their opportunity to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it was incumbent upon government to make sure that they reduce those barriers that got in the way of people becoming the best version of themselves. So this is, I say to folks all the time, why didn't we have handicap parking? Why think we got it? Because we got handicapped folk. Who need an equal opportunity to access things. I mean, that just makes sense. We know that diversity is here to stay. And contrary to what some folks think, this whole world is diverse. And it must have been the intention of the Creator for us to know how to deal with that. Come on, we can send folks to the moon.
That's right.
We have all sorts of ways of developing, even technology, even our treatment medically. We have evolved to an amazing country. So there's something about this body that we got
Right.
that has tremendous potential. Well, my goodness, if you know that, why don't you just realize that there's something about this world that should be good?
Right. So in your evolution, moving from excellence makes perfect not, what was your eureka moment and understanding that it takes a certain type of disposition as a leader to be able to truly understand what greatness is?
You know, Dr. Mitchell, it's really something when you think about, you know, the fact that we don't know how to dribble, and the fact that so many things are so basic to us being the best version of ourselves. And what I've learned about this whole area of excellence, of equity, of its trilogy, diversity, inclusion, and cultural competency, is that because we live in a diverse world, it's incumbent upon us to realize that because of our differences, it takes an ability to relate to folks in a way that does no harm.
That's right.
You know, and so what I've truly have found is that it's hard to embrace this fundamental, unalienable right of equity without the skill set of cultural competency.
Right.
You know, and so for my eureka moment came when I, as an African American, went from Beaver County, where I grew up, as you did.
That's right.
Grew up, and Beaver County, through much of my life, was 90% white. So every place I went, teachers, law enforcement, doctors,
Right.
businesses, every place I went were white folk. And so one of the things that you learned growing up black is that you had to develop some kind of competencies in order to make those interactions positive. In spite of, when I was growing up, I couldn't even go to Junction swimming pool because if you were African American, you weren't allowed. I couldn't go to the YMCA when I grew growing up until I was 12 years old because if you, in spite of navigating those negatives,
That's right.
you still had to develop the competency because they were in every aspect of your life. So I grew up thinking, that I had some of that until I traveled to Texas in 2002 to visit my grandson, who had just been born, to my Army son and his wife. And I remember getting off that plane in San Antonio, coming from Beaver County, where I grew up, right? And I did not know how unprepared I was for the Mexican-American population that I was about to interact with. I was clueless. And I was clueless because I'm coming from Beaver County, where my only diversity, pretty much, was white folks. So part of me, and I say this when I do training in my humorous way, I said I arrived there and I'm thinking, oh, where are my white folks at? I'm okay, if they're here, but what? They wasn't there. And that competency, that incompetency that I had more to do with Mexican Americans being out of my experience. More to do with the practice of omission.
Right.
More to do with my inability to dribble.
Right.
You follow me?
I do.
We all are subject to that incompetence just because of where we grow up. And we need to recognize it's a barrier to our ability to relate to each other.
Right.
And consequently, it's a barrier to greatness.
That's right.
We will never be great until we understand that all of us require a competency in order to relate to our diversity. And it's real.
Right.
It's real.
Right.
And you can't erase it in a way that allows you to function.
Right.
No. You got to meet it head on.
Right.
And so in reality, we've got to develop that competency.
Right.
And my moment of that recognition taught me clearly that diversity doesn't make you culturally competent.
That's right.
So whether you're gay or straight, whether you are rich or poor, whether you are black or white, whether you are Jew or Gentile, doesn't matter. That doesn't make you culturally confident. It makes you diverse.
Right.
To become culturally confident requires intentional practice.
Right.
Intentional.
Right. So as we talk about intentional practice, in your book, what type of mind and character are you identifying as someone who's capable of making this transition to become a transformational leader for all people?
You know, the one thing that I want folks to understand, and I really want them to pick up this book and read this book that's going to be out in time for our anniversary celebrations. Read the book, because it's very clear to me that there's a direct connection between cultural competency and our moral fiber, our moral arc. You know, and so, and that's why the book talks about virtue as critical to leadership. And what we have to begin to do is understand that for us to develop the ability to live, work, play, and learn together, and you know, I always like to add to that the notion of do no harm.
Right.
We've got to all become connected to a message that allows us to experience what it really is. And what I have learned, there is a direct connection between how we treat each other and greatness, and there's some simple concepts that people can acquire if they want to understand how to relate to each other positively.
Right.
Case in point, something that you and I have talked about on occasions, the
Right.
4 A's. That when people feel accepted, acknowledged, appreciated, and paid attention to, there's a good chance that you can generate that positive energy in your interaction with folk.
right.
And it doesn't matter what their diversity is. If your interaction makes them feel
Right.
accepted,
right.
acknowledged, appreciated, paid attention to,
right.
it generates that positive energy. And that, to me, is one of the foundational principles of being culturally competent. If you don't learn anything else, learn that. And you'll advance your ability to live, work, play, and learn together and do no harm. However, you and I know this is also true when people don't feel
That's right.
accepted, when they don't feel acknowledged, when they don't feel appreciated and don't feel paid attention to, it just eludes negativity.
Right. That's right.
You know, and so for us as a country, in this 250th anniversary, we have to realize that we've got to become very intentional
That's right.
about helping people understand how to dribble, understand those fundamental principles that are critical in this game of life that we're all engaged in. And just recognizing that those 4 A's are critical. You know, sometimes it's difficult to negotiate with folks if they don't respect you.
That's right.
It's difficult to negotiate with folks if they don't accept you. It's difficult to negotiate with folks if you feel that your status is above them.
That's right.
You know, so when our religion makes somebody above somebody else, dangerous, for especially in a democracy where we're all supposed to be equal, status is a danger to folk if we don't understand how that affects how you approach others. And it's contrary to those 4 A's. So yes, it's important to understand the fundamentals of being culturally competent, and they're wrapped up in those 4 A's.
That's right. I have used your 4 A's in my classrooms over the years with amazing success and results from predominantly students who came from school districts where there was very little diversity. So as we look at the issue of diversity and your work with Do No Harm in bringing America greatness, what type of results are you seeing in some of the schools and places where it's being implemented?
Well, you know, the one thing that I've noticed about schools, and I think that's why schools are my biggest love, having been, you know, trained as a teacher and spent most of my life in the education arena, both in basic ed and higher ed, I have learned, you know, that it's so important that the environment that you're in, the atmosphere in that environment, is really what makes us more adept at growing and becoming the best version of ourselves. So when kids come to a school, for example, and feel welcome, that emotion,
Right.
along with what teachers are teaching them, connect. But the feeling of feeling welcome is huge for kids because the corollary of that is dangerous.
Right.
What happens to kids when they don't feel welcome?
That's right.
What happens to kids when they get bullied? What happens with kids when people make them feel that they are less than because they don't come from the same income level? That's one of the main reasons why it's so important that schools become very intentional
Right.
about being a welcoming environment. That they become very intentional about doing no harm. And so the main message of do no harm is not to harm somebody by
Right.
your actions,
That's
words, or thoughts. And so in many ways, this message for schools has been a powerful message to help them see that when you come into the school, everybody is taught how important that is. I just love to talk about what this message feels like.
Right.
So for me, it's the rhythm that makes kids kind of connect to what it means to do no harm.
Right.
So do no harm.
Right.
Actions, words, or thoughts.
Right.
Remember when you come in here, everyone is taught.
Right.
Respect, honor, excellence.
That's right.
Together we can achieve. Hello. Just do no harm and find to show the best of you and me.
That's
It's so important
Right.
that kids connect their emotion to the learning.
That's right.
And when you do that positively,
Right.
yes, the rhythm,
That's
you
right.
and you're a percussionist.
Yeah, I was feeling it.
You're a percussionist. So you understand how powerful that is.
That is right.
Not only in facilitating that positive energy, but also in recognizing each other.
Right.
From the perspective of what that means in their lives.
That's right.
To me, it's just such a valuable thing to be able to get schools, K to
Right.
12.
Right.
When time the kids come in the door, remember, when you come in here, everyone is taught.
That's right. That's
You know?
right.
And as you know, that can be extrapolated to a lot of areas
It
in
can
this
be.
country, not just education, but
Right.
it's certainly a messaging of competency
Right.
that we all need,
Right.
aside of schools. But we can't lose another generation of
That's right.
kids.
And that's so
Messaging.
critical. That
Very
is so critical. So as we talk about on a national landscape and your message of bringing America greatness, what are the inherent dangers if we fail to rise to this occasion in addressing the national leadership as it relates to the upcoming 250th celebration of this nation's beginnings, the importance of intentionality.
Yes.
We talked a little bit about the mind and character that's necessary to truly lead authentic greatness. What is your message?
It's really, in a nutshell, about virtue. That the driving force behind the Declaration of Independence was the Creator. The book opens with Carl Sagan, and Carl Sagan does an amazing job at depicting the universe from the Creator's point of view. When he describes the view of the earth from the universe and how profound it is when you realize that, as far as we know, when the Creator designed this universe, he put life on earth on one place.
That's right.
And from the Creator's view, this ain't a very big place. It's a little teeny weeny dot. And so the Creator must have wanted us as inhabitants of this earth, to reflect what it means to be interconnected and what it means to live in harmony. There's nothing about the Creator that would have sent us to this earth to be ugly. So that messaging is demonstrated by the experience astronauts have. If you read the overview effect on astronauts when they've traveled to space, they have caught the view that the Creator must have had. And that virtue embedded in the Creator, embedded in the Declaration of Independence, that our rights, inalienable, are endowed by the Creator. Oh my. Oh my. So virtue must have been something that's tremendously important when it comes to us being on this earth.
Right.
So virtue, how can we live without it?
That's right.
You know, and if we look at what's happening today, in a country like ours, a democracy, and you and I talk a lot about Dr. King and his moral arc.
That's right.
You know, there was no question that the founding fathers, aside from the fact that, you know, they had some issues, however, they understood that everybody was entitled
That's right.
to these alienable rights. If that's the case, then that virtue becomes critical to our governance.
That's right.
So this book is about speaking virtue to leadership. That if you're going to lead in a democracy, it's dangerous to do it without virtue.
That's right.
Because the end game ultimately will be what Dr. King was really warning us about. The arc of a moral universe is long and it bends towards justice. But absent virtue, moral fiber in the arc, in our democracy, where does it bend? It bends towards the majority.
That's right.
If you really want to learn how to address the challenges we face in greatness, you got to understand how important virtue is in
That's
that
right.
process.
That's right.
And so the leaders, especially in America, across every sector, and we'll talk about those sectors, but across every sector, the leaders ought to understand that wherever people come together, wherever they come together, you've got to make sure that you are giving them that virtuous skill set, that cultural competency, so that that environment is welcoming,
Right.
so that that environment is honorable to all, so that environment makes people feel included, that it makes them feel accepted. That's the skill set of cultural competency. That's the virtue of leadership that everybody needs. So yes, I'm a firm believer that if we're going to do no harm,
That's right.
leaders have got to understand it's not going to happen unless we possess the ability to relate to each other in a positive way. And that's why cultural competency is so important. And my view is that it belongs in so many sectors. One of my pet peeves, as you know, has been the faith-based community. And my disappointment in how the faith-based community has not contributed to establishing this virtue in leadership. I often say one of the dangers of being a democracy is that it creates self-interest, not just in leadership, but also in the electorate.
Right.
And we oftentimes vote on somebody that can deliver for us personally. And in doing so, from time to time, Dr. Mitchell, as you know, it compromises our virtue.
That's right. That's right.
We can put somebody in a leadership role not because of their virtue, but because they can serve us in our needs.
Self-interest.
Yes, yes. And that's dangerous in a democracy. And that's the very thing that the founding fathers wanted to avoid, because without that virtue, majority rules. Majority rules.
That's right. As Dr. King evolved his own dream and vision for America, he said something very profound. He said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Absolutely.
So how did we get here today where you have leaders who seem to not fully comprehend the enormous power they have to be agents of authentic greatness, and yet because of self-interest, they fall short of valuing the virtues that are necessary to build a society that truly embraces inclusiveness.
Well, let me connect that. Let me connect those two initiatives because they're so connected to this moral compass that the Founding Fathers wanted us to have, and the faith community and government that's often, dealing with this dichotomy of the separation of church and state. Yeah, church and state is separate, but virtue is not a separation, of church and state. It's the integration of what's personal for all of us. Virtue is not political. You don't necessarily have it or not have it because you're a Republican, Democrat. No. Virtue is personal. So it requires that we dissect from our own self-interest that very important virtue that drives greatness. See, this is why America will struggle with being great if we don't understand what drives it. And what drives us is a simple notion. It has so much to do with our ability to live, work, play, and learn together, to treat each other honorably, because there's a tremendous energy, like a good team, when folks are in sync. America is not in sync. And in so many ways, our system, our political system, has evolved to division as opposed to unity. Well, there's no way that we will ever be great, ever, until we figure out the skill set that brings unity, the skill set that brings cultural competency, the skill set that brings equity to all, the skill set that does no harm.
That's right. Over the years, as you have helped parents, teachers, educational leaders, curriculum coordinators, civic representatives understand some of these very fundamental concepts of virtue and morality. A few years ago, you implemented an initiative in the North Hills School District, and you have had a number of initiatives that looked at the equity trilogy. Could you talk a little bit about how this particular school district has moved far beyond using your methods to influence change?
I think one of the things that has helped me in my work has been this equity leadership course through the Department of Education that administrators have been engaged in, and gave me an opportunity to really speak to why this notion of equity is important, and why it's important for the students within this educational arena to acquire this notion of how to develop ways of working, living, playing, learning together.
Right.
So yes, North Hills has been an amazing experience for me because the administrative staff there participated in that equity leadership course. It's been the leadership of their administration that have enabled these kids, the true benefactor of equity leadership is in the people that are in your sphere of influence. So whether you are a business owner, whether you are the leader of a congregation or synagogue, whether you are in law enforcement, leading law enforcement, any place where people gather, that skill set is critical because it brings out the positive energy necessary for us to be great. Without it, people make mistakes all the time.
That's right.
And they don't really see. But at North Hills, it's been fun to see how the leadership has embedded do no harm, K to 12, how the leadership has embedded teachers to deliver this message, integrated
That's right.
into their academic curriculum.
That's right.
So what they're doing, as often I like to talk about, is recognizing the difference between boat and goat. That we've heard the use of the term, especially today, many times in terms of athletes, but just in terms of successful people, people being goats, the greatest of all time. The book, and this is one of the reasons I want you to read the book, is because the book makes a distinction between best of all time and greatest of all time. And I remember having this conversation with some of the staff at North Hills, and we were discussing, what do we want kids to be?
Right.
Boats or goats? And it's very clear that this virtue that we're talking about has got to be a practice
Right.
that kids experience within their educational experience. So what seems to me is that whether you are an A, B, or C student, we categorize those as the best being, of course, the highest achievers. But goats are different. Goats take the best of whoever you are and says, give back, and says, treat each other honorably. So when you leave this school and get into the workplace, you have a clear understanding of that personal skill set necessary to help create this honorable environment that you are now in. So yes, I want business owners to understand the power of having a culturally confident workforce. I want law enforcement to understand the power of having a culturally confident police force. I want the faith-based community to understand how important it is to recognize the key factors related to being a faith community that reaches out and serves others in a way that does no harm.
Right.
And so yes, North Hills School District has been an amazing example of what we can do in an educational environment that allows kids to grow up,
Right.
to be the greatest of all time.
Right. In your work over the years, I've had a chance to sit in on some of your professional development training sessions, and I've also observed educators having that eureka moment. And when I sat in a few years ago on one of the sessions at North Hills, it was very insightful to see educators talking to each other about how they are starting to arrive at this eureka moment and what that may mean for them in terms of how they decide to become a different type of leader. Do you see that a lot in your work?
I do, and what's interesting is that what I've learned, and one of the things that I have to speak to, as in my experience, that has been monumental to me, has been my work with the WPIL and my colleagues on the Equity Advisory Council, and what we've learned about creating cultural sensitivity within our competitions. And so we've studied ways that we can begin to develop strategies that minimize some of the ugliness that we've seen in some sports contests. And so from that experience, I've learned a lot about what we need to be doing to create that kind of energy that allows us to be a little bit more welcoming, a little bit more honorable in the way we interact, and address that practice of omission that oftentimes creates some of these challenges within each other. So yeah, I'm convinced that one of the things about cultural competency, because I confess I'm not culturally competent because I'm Black. Nobody is. Cultural competency comes from your intentional experience in knowing how to dribble.
Right.
Either you do or you don't. If you don't know how to do it, it's going to affect your competency. And so what I found about this, and then of course, you know me, I always like to talk about the salad bowl, because America has evolved from the practice of the melting pot. And the melting pot has erased much of the identity, especially when it comes to family heritage, of many folk. And over the years, folks who used to speak another language when they came to this country. Over the years, from generations, folks that are here now, many of them are clueless about their heritage because they've been Americanized. Nothing wrong with being Americanized, but my goodness, you don't have to erase your identity to feel what it means to be American. And so I often talk about what America really is and always was a salad bowl. But we melted them.
Right.
We scrambled them all up, took away their identity, eliminated diversity, and so we created a practice of assimilation that folks lost their identity. I love teaching about the salad bowl. You know, properly taught cultural competency can be very disarming, easy to embrace, because it recognizes that we are carrots and olives and radishes and cucumbers and tomatoes and peppers, all unique, all unique. But we are all in this salad together. But what America isn't, and this is the critical skill set for the salad bowl, critical skill set. America lacks the ability to be lightly tossed. And that's what's necessary wherever diversity is. We're different. But we can embrace differences.
That's right.
If we understand we're in the salad together.
That's right.
You know, and so it's just natural because you're rubbing next to. So I always say that dressing that goes on that salad that allows us to be lightly tossed, those ingredients, cooperation.
That's right.
Humility, unity, patience, empathy, love, kindness. When you really understand how to be great, it's being lightly tossed with those ingredients that bring out the best of who we are. You know, so yes, you know, I'm convinced that America has to be engaged in a kind of practice that's going to allow them to grow into this greatness. And the book talks at length about how important it is to recognize that we are not, we should no longer be a melting pot. We should really, truly focus on being a salad bowl.
As someone who's a historian, that's very important from my lens. You know, as we prepare to celebrate the 250th beginning of the nation in 1776, I've been reminding folk that there were people of African descent here earlier than 1619, but if we just start with 1619, let's not dismiss 157 years that people of African descent were contributing to the emergence of the protest movement that occurred in 1776. So in the work that you're doing, as we talk about intentionality, as we talk about doing no harm, if you were to summarize the bringing America greatness for any leader, whether in politics, in business, a faith-based leader, what would you describe as are the essential requirements?
Well, let me just say the end game with whatever strategy we use to bring America greatness, it can't do harm.
Right.
If it does harm, you'll never get greatness. Greatness, cultural competency, unity should never do harm. And so the idea is to learn up front that this notion of equal opportunity for all should never do harm. It's an unalienable right. These all connect into a practice that allows us to seek greatness. It's just disturbing to me in today's climate that you could take actions, and oftentimes these actions are political. You know, we live in a very political world. Right. And they do harm to folks just because they're not in the same party. They do harm to folks just because they can't help them get elected. I don't know if you remember back in the hip hop day, there was a notion called CREAM, C-R-E-A-M. It stood for Cash Rules Everything Around Me. The greatest danger to a democracy like ours is that we have evolved into a nation in which those that have cash can lobby those who are creating the rules. And the danger of that when virtue doesn't exist.
That's right.
There's nothing about cash that is synonymous with greatness. There's nothing about power that's synonymous with greatness. It's really about how you use what you have to spawn the goodness that the Creator must have intended for this earth. And that's where we got to get back to. If you remember, back in the day, 1968, Dr. King was in the Birmingham jail.
That's right.
And from that jail, he wrote letters to white ministers that made a significant change in the civil rights movement.
That's right.
Because it became something when so many of these white folks were moved to deal with the harm that was being done.
That's right.
To people of color. Today, my biggest disappointment is when you see the lack of virtue in our leadership and the amount of division. Too many people of faith are in sync with that harm in the name of self-interest.
Why are they silent?
That's a good question. Well, I think they're silent because they get caught up in that political notion of their own congregations. You've got pastors out, and there are some who will tell it like it is to their congregations without fear of retribution. But there are others who recognize that there are topics that they won't touch, particularly if their congregation is leaning towards one political persuasion versus another. They won't, and the righteousness that they should be speaking is what they miss. I will say this to the faith-based community. For those that understand the Christian doctrine as I do, there was a critical moment when the disciples, in their commitment to Jesus, there was a critical moment and when they were talking with the Pharisees and being questioned about, is it lawful to pay taxes? And they were asking this question to Jesus. And Jesus says, show me a coin. So they show him a coin, and he says, whose insignia is on that coin? And they said, Caesar. One of the most profound things ever said in the New Testament was this. So you render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and you render to God the things that are God. The problem with virtue in America is we get confused because we think God and Caesar are the same. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is a right that you have as a citizen of this country, but there's a righteousness expected because you believe you belong to God. And therein lies a huge dichotomy. Because in my understanding of being culturally competent and interconnected, that in God's realm, righteousness doesn't do harm. It's how do we begin to help the religious community understand that when you see harm being done in the name of the government, you've got to separate yourselves from what Jesus said. There's a difference between your right and being righteous.
Right.
And we're supposed to be in that righteous domain where no harm is done. So you can imagine sitting back and watching some of the ugly things that are being done today to harm people.
That's right.
To harm people, in the name of the right. Right.
That's
in the name of being right.
That's right.
And yet, folks buy into it, claiming also that they're a person of faith. Really? How hypocritical is that? Read the book, folks.
Yes.
Read the books. Faith-based community, read the book. Understand that it's our job to focus on that righteous domain. And when folks aren't in it, our virtue requires that we speak it to leadership.
Dr. Sheffield, you have laid out a visionary framework for transformational leadership in a time where there's so much chaos on a governmental level. I know you to be very selfless and a righteous man of righteousness, but I have to ask you this question. Would you like to see bringing America greatness become a movement?
I leave that to the good Lord. All I know is that this is a message that God has given to me in behalf, and I am, I always tell folks, my arms are too short to bother with God. When he says when he gives you something, and we are his vessel, when he gives you something, you got to go with it. I'll leave the rest to him. I am just humbled and honored that he chose me to bring this message at this point in time. I never thought 3 years ago when I was teaching equity leadership that there'd be an end game here called Bringing America Greatness.
Right.
And that do no harm would become a pledge that folks could use to understand the importance of cultural competency, equity, and how we live, work, play, and learn together. Never would have dreamed it. But I am excited about the possibility that if folks really want to understand how to be great, how to manifest the Creator's vision of this earth, another profound moment in Christ's life, in his interaction with the disciples, was when the disciples asked him to teach us to pray. I will end with this. And of course, everybody knows Jesus gave what was the Lord's Prayer. But here's what they missed from the Lord's Prayer. Because in the very beginning of the Lord's Prayer, Jesus says, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." And then he gets profound. He says, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." You see, Jesus was talking about these two kingdoms that God made. For his will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. See, in heaven, he's got it going on. In earth, there's still a question mark. But he set us up. He set us up to understand that in heaven, getting his will done on this earth is what allows you, by his grace, to experience what it's like in heaven. But those two kingdoms are important to understand. In this kingdom, greatness is at the center of the Creator. But we are all capable of manifesting what that looks like on this earth.
That's right.
So my goal is to help folks understand that we need to know the skill set. We need to know the skill set for this earth to be what the Creator envisioned, and why this messaging is so important, that to do his will here requires us to know how to live, work, play, and learn together.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sheffield.
Thank you, my man.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it. It's always good being with you.
Wonderful conversation.
It's always good being with you. And folks, if you get a chance, the book will be out in time for the July 4th celebrations. You will find it on Amazon. You will find it in every bookstore. It's titled Bringing America Greatness. Take a chance, take a look at it, and see if it can help you understand what it means to bring greatness to America.